Thank you everyone for joining this workshop. As you all know, this is a online workshop on basic photography. So my name is Sumit Dhupar. I will be the presenter and the mentor for this workshop. Content what we are going to cover in this workshop in the next slides. Let's see. So let me introduce myself. My name is Sumit Dhupar, and I'm a professional photographer. I'm doing this photography since 2017. You can see that what kind of work I'm doing and what I can offer in this workshop. Most of the time, I like to do my creative artwork related to still life photography or nature photography, and I try to give a touch of canvas or feel in my photos. If you have seen that my photo have different gradient effects, because that's the style of work I do. And just few months back, I launched my website, sumitphotoworld.com, and you can visit my website to find all the content related to my different services which I offer. And SPW Expedition is just one of part of my offer services, and I do my online workshops under this brand SPW Expedition. So this will be the schedule for today's session. We will have a theory and Q&A session. In theory session, we'll have two parts. So theory session 1 will be the 90 minutes, which we are just going to start now. And we'll have a break 10 minutes, so you can relax for a bit and just join it back after 10 minutes. And then we'll have second theory session. That will be 30 minutes. So we will try to cover the content during the last 30 minutes, whatever left from the previous session. And we will have a 30 minutes lunch break. And 30 minutes, I hope it should be fine with you. So you can have your lunch. And then we can move forward to the last session, which will be the Q&A session. So here is our first topic for this workshop. How DSLR works. So you must have seen the DSLR camera. They have quite different function when we compare to point and shoot camera. And in point and shoot camera, we just press the shutter release button and the image will be captured. So there is nothing much to play with the settings. And nowadays we have few point and shoot camera which where you can manage ISO, aperture and all. But some lens part is something which we can refer to DSLR. So DSLR is all having capability to use different lenses, and lenses will be having a glasses elements and all to include. So here we'll just try to understand how DSLR works. So you can see the image here. There are two images. One is the DSLR diagram where it's just in a normal position. And where we can check through the viewfinder, and when we see through viewfinder, we can see whatever in front of the camera. So that's the very normal position. And in this DSLR camera, you can see there are many elements here. We have lens, we have reflex mirror, we have a focusing screen mat, and we have a pentaprism. We have eyepiece, focal plane shutters, we have sensor, and the light is how the light is traveling when it's reaching through the lens and hitting the sensor and how it's redirecting to the viewfinder. So that's the very basic and very easy way to understand how light reaches via sensor. So that's how we are able to see through the viewfinder. And there is one image on the right side where moment of shooting. So when the image is captured or when we press the shutter release button, so image need to be captured in a sensor. So you can see one striped line at the back, this red line, this is the sensor. So image will be captured here only. And when we press the shutter release button, that this reflex mirror, which always will be on the 45-degree angle, it just go up and let the light reach the sensor, and that image will be recorded in the sensor. That's how the image captured. and I will share all this content. So don't be feel in a hurry to read all this. So try to ease out and try to listen what I say, because what I'm saying is just a very descriptive, very brief content from this whole matter what you can see here on the screen. So you will get the content file. So be relaxed. Okay, now we will just learn about exposure balance. So EV, you must have seen the EV button, exposure compensation. So it's all about that, and how to make your photos lighter and darker. We have light meter function in our DSLR camera, and we expect to have that light balance. So in your light meter, that marker should be on 0. So there should be nothing overexposed or nothing underexposed. So if a marker is going on the left side, then it means that image may have some elements underexposed. And if marker going on the right side, then we will have some elements which may be overexposed. So that's all the light meter, and we can judge with the natural eyes that how the light is coming in overall. Camera light meter is not error free. So as I said, you have to use your own visuality, and how you can see the image on the viewfinder on the LCD, how it looks like, because some elements recognized as overexposed or underexposed by the camera, but in reality it will not. So you have to use your own sense. High contrast scenes can trick your camera. So if you have very high contrast background, it can trick your camera. It can fool your camera to judge it any scene underexposed or overexposed. We will learn about how exposure compensation works, and you will better understand that what it all means, that how it can trick using exposure compensation in different shooting modes. So we have to change exposure compensation settings. We have to manipulate and according to our shooting conditions. So how the scene or light condition are there and the background, we have to adjust our exposure and compensation. Exposure compensation is only available if you are shooting in your camera's program, aperture mode, and shutter priority mode. So only on these modes you can use this exposure compensation. So that's how the camera behave or react to the exposure compensation. And you can see these images, just for example, how the button looks like. In Canon we have this button like this, and in Nikon and in all models they have button like this only, this plus minus square. In Fuji we have a dial for this function. So in dial we can just directly adjust the settings to manage our exposure and compensation. Exposure compensation, how to use. So we understand that what is exposure compensation, but how we will use it. So there will be plus sign. Setting will make your image brighter than the standard exposure. So if we with purpose add exposure with the plus values, then it will make the image look brighter. We can, when we adjust any stop to +1 or -1, so that's considered as if full stop change. So it can increment. So +1, +2, +3. So these are full stop. So whenever we do full stop, either it can double the exposure or half the exposure. But most camera offer intermediate half stop or third stop increments for more subtle adjustments. So some camera offer this function for exposure compensation, where we can gradually adjust the exposure instead of doing full stop. So now we will talk about camera modes. In DSLR camera, we have different modes. P, S, A. You must have seen these letters, M modes. These are all called as exposure modes. Shooting modes fall into three categories: auto, scene, and PSA and M mode. So all these are shooting modes, and we will mostly talk about these semi modes and the manual modes here. In auto and scene modes, the camera controls shutter speed and aperture. So your camera is going to control the shutter speed and aperture if you are in auto mode. So be careful when you are doing this, because you will try to capture a moment where you want to freeze something or show in motion. Then camera can show different image, and you may lose the scene. So be careful when you are in auto mode or scene modes. PSA and M mode. M modes are also known as exposure modes. So because when we use these modes, they'll adjust the exposure. So the result, final result image would be underexposure or exposure or overexposed. So that's why we call these modes as exposure modes. And give photographers a choice as to which elements of exposure, aperture, or shutter speed they wish to control. So you can have more control on that part. You want to control exposure, aperture, or shutter speeds. How you are going to manage exposure? You can change the shutter speed, or you can manage the exposure to get different control of a light in a frame. How you can manage that light is reaching the lens. You can have aperture value alter or change, or shutter speed. So that's how the button looks like on different cameras. So these are the examples, and this left one is example from the Nikon Canon, and the right the image in the middle button is from the Canon. So you can see in Nikon we have M mode, and in Canon also we have M mode. So the manual mode having same letter which notify that this is the manual mode. But for aperture in Nikon we have A, and in Canon we have AV. For shutter priority mode in Nikon we have S, and in Canon we have TV. And again the P mode, it's a programmable mode. So that's again it's like the manual mode. It's the same in both devices. And the screen, LCD screen, info screen, when you press the info button, you will have screen like this. So this is the example from Nikon device. You can see all the details on the info screen. So now we will just dig a bit more in the camera modes and try to understand how it works and how they function. Mode P, programmed mode auto. So the camera automatically adjusts aperture and shutter speed for optimal exposure. Photographer can choose from different combinations of aperture and shutter speed that will produce the same exposure. This is known as flexible program mode. So what we have learned about that, you can choose different combinations. So if you try to change your shutter speed, then aperture will change automatically. So camera will adjust the aperture to compensate light, so to have a good balanced exposure. And if you change aperture, then camera will change the shutter speed to compensate the light. So that's how you can get good balanced exposure in a programmed mode. In most of the workshops, I always recommend take a test shot when you go for a photography anywhere, anytime. Take a test shot using a programmed auto mode. So this will give you idea about what would be the EXIF, what would be the camera settings to get a good exposure balance. And you can work with in the manual mode around those settings. So be careful when you are in new to the camera and you don't know much about how we can play with the manual mode. So try to use programmed mode. It will help you in the camera settings, and which you can feed in the manual mode and get a good exposure. Mode S and TV, shutter priority auto mode. So the photographer choose the shutter speed and camera automatically adjusts the aperture for optimal exposure. So as we learned about that, shutter priority mode is designed to play or adjust the shutter speed. So we can just change the value of shutter speed and camera will automatically adjust the aperture, and it will give us optimal exposure always. And mode A and AV in the Canon, it's aperture priority auto mode. The photographer chooses the aperture and the camera automatically adjusts the shutter speeds for optimal exposure. So again, when we adjust the aperture in aperture priority mode, it will allow us to change aperture, and also camera automatically adjust the shutter speed, and it will give you again optimal exposure. So these modes, if you see, they are designed to give you optimal exposure, but also giving you control on the some aspects in the camera settings. So you can control those settings, but still camera will give you good exposure. So we call these modes as a semi modes also, because these are semi auto modes, because some part you are able to control and some part controlled by camera. That's why we call these as a semi modes. Mode M, it's a manual mode, and photographer chooses both aperture and shutter speed, providing the greatest latitude for creative expression. So it is giving you all strength and all control on the device, so you can control each aspects in camera settings, and you have to decide that how the exposure will be finalized and get into the frame. So it's you which you will decide that how the light is coming. Sometimes you can get a very harsh light, but if you are in a good place where you can control the light, so by shading something, by adding diffuser and all, you can still get a good exposure using manual mode. Manual mode will give you all control on the aperture, shutter speed you can play with, and you have to adjust it according to the light condition. Choosing wrong combination could, however, result in photographers that are overexposed and underexposed. So it could be overexposed or underexposed. So if you choose different settings and you didn't notice that how the light meter is reading the values, so it can be very tricky and it can give you very average kind of results. So be careful when you are playing with the manual mode. Always keep an eye on the light meter, how the light is reading. So this camera exposure indicator is something which is which I was talking about, the light meter, which we saw in the exposure compensation. So in all three modes, P, S, and A mode, exposure is automatically adjusted for optimal results. So this is the key here. So if you are in any semi modes or in auto mode, the exposure will be optimal and it will be controlled by the camera. Autofocus and manual focus. So when we talk about using autofocus versus manual focus, it's a very big topic to debate, but very people get confused that when they should move to manual focus or should they continue with the autofocus. So it's up to you how you want to take your photography. If you are serious with your photography and you want to move forward somewhere, sometime, you have to move on to manual focus. So better to start doing practice and try to understand that how the manual focus behaves and how it give you more liberty. One of the most confusing aspects can be figuring out when you should use manual focus versus when it's better to use autofocus. Autofocus mode is one where the camera determines the sharpest focus using sensors that are devoted to measuring the focus of the scene. So when we are in autofocus, it's a camera deciding that this point where you have the focal point targeted, that will take the focus from that point. So if you have different elements in your frame, and you can keep your focal point on that one object and start doing focus, it will give you focus of that point. But if you are in manual focus, you have to play with the focus ring, and you have to decide that how the focus will be on the desired object or element. In camera settings, you can see the screen like this. The left screen is from the Nikon device, and the right screen is from the Canon device. So in Nikon, we have these focusing modes. We have this AFA, AFS, AFC, MF. MF is the manual focus, and in Canon, we have this one shot, AI focus, and AI servo. So one shot is something which is AFS in Nikon. So in AFS in Nikon is giving you a single focus, we can say. So we have subject where we will focus, and this focus will be locked. So it will not continually focus on that. If subject moves, then focus will not be shifted. So you will miss the focus if you are using this AFS mode on a subject which is going either away from you or coming towards you. So be careful. Use this mode in a condition where subject is very still and in a parallel way. So it's walking in the parallel can also work, but try to use this when subject is not doing so much movement and sitting around the same place. We will have a complete slide to discuss about these modes. And AI focus is automatically switch from one shot to AI servo. So one shot, as we learned about, that AFS single shot is one shot in Canon, and AI servo is continuous, AFC, continuous focusing mode. It's a AI servo in Canon. So now we will just read more about these focusing modes. Which focus mode you are in. So to see which focus mode you are currently in, press the info button on your DSLR camera. When you press info button on your camera, you will see a screen like this. The left screen is from Nikon, and the right screen is from Canon. So you can see that there is a focusing mode. We can see I have highlighted AFA, and here in the right screen you can see it's highlighted one shot. So these are focusing modes. However, the focusing mode settings may be displayed using an icon or the initials or like AF and MF. Sometimes you can set the focus modes on the interchangeable lens by sliding a switch. So you must have seen a lens where you will see button AF, MF or MA or M. So you will see all these buttons in your lens where you can control that lens will do autofocus or not. You can control it from the lens also. So manual focus, MF. With manual focus, you are going to use the palm of your left hand to cup the lens. So we will have a camera like this. When you are in doing manual focus, you have to hold your camera like this, and this will give you more stability. So it's like you are working with your own made tripod. So that's why it's advised when we capture any image, we have to hold camera like this. It will give you more liberty and more stability. In other modes, you can still manage with the different hand movements, but it's advised to always play with or capture your image with this position of handheld. And then use your left hand fingers to slightly twist the focus ring on the DSLR until the image is sharp. So as I said that you have to play with the focus ring. So this is the focus rings. I hope it's clear, very clear to you on the screen. So this is the focus ring, So you can move this focus ring while on the manual focus, but you have to hold your camera like this, and you can manage it, and you can play with the focus ring. It will let you focusing manually. Holding camera properly is the key. So if you are holding it properly as I displayed, then you will have better chances to get the good focus, and it's captured very good. It will give you good result. A sturdy tripod is recommended for manual focus. So if you are lucky and you have tripod with you, then better to use a tripod with the manual focus. Autofocus, AF. AFS single servo is good for stationary subject, as the focus locks when the shutter is pressed halfway. So as we discussed earlier, AFS or single servo is good for stationary subject. So if the subject is very stationary, not doing too much movement, better to use AFS. So most of the time in my camera, I always use AFS, and very rarely, and when I have very demanding condition where I need to use AFC, I move to continuous focusing mode. Otherwise, I'll always be on AFS. So AFS is more about when we are capturing a subject which is stationary and not doing too much movement. So it's better to press the shutter release button halfway. So if you have a camera in your hand, you have to just press it halfway and don't fully depress it. If you fully depress it, it will capture the image. So our aim is to lock the focus, not to capture it. So when we press halfway, the focus is locked. It will not do or not try to calculate any focus, and you have to just frame it, your subject, and fully press it. So that's the better way, and you can avoid shutter lag also using this technique. And AFC, continuous servo, is it good for moving subjects? So AFC, people get confused that when we are in AFC, so camera is automatically doing focus, and every time it's recalculating. So why it is not advised to use AFC mode? AFC mode is good, but when subject is always in front of focal point, so it means your subject either going away from the camera or coming towards the camera. So if you have a subject which is moving in parallel, going just in front of the lens, then you will find a condition where you are focusing on the subject, and subject is moving, and your focus will shift towards something, some object in the background. So your focus will shift to object in the background, and you will miss the shot. So better try to avoid it. And when you are in a very close-up shot or doing very full zoom on a subject where it's very difficult to miss the focal point from the subject, you can still use the AFC. So there are techniques for AFC also. I covered that techniques in my bird photography and all. So that is 3D tracking. So 3D tracking is a feature available in a Nikon device, and in Canon we have automatic focus selection. So those techniques will help you to keep the focus on a subject. They will chase the subject and give you better exposure and good focus even in the continuous mode. Now we will talk about AFA, auto servo. So as we discussed, that AFA is fully auto focusing mode. So you are allowing your camera to choose your focusing modes, and camera will decide if subject is stationary or subject is moving or doing in motion. So even a person sitting for a few seconds in front of your lens can be considered as a stationary subject for the camera lens. So that's the camera. That's how the camera behaves in AFA mode. Now we will talk about shutter speed. Shutter speed is a measurement of the time, and the shutter is open. So it's a camera mechanism to treat a shutter speed or to notify that this is a shutter speed, it's a time. It's a how long the shutter will remain open. So that will be considered as a shutter speed or exposure time. Most of the professional photographers say this term as exposure time. So shown in the seconds or in the fractions of seconds. So you can see the shutter speed, how it looks like when in the camera settings. And when it will come in single digits like this, 1, 2, 3, even up to 30. So that will be in seconds. But when we see the figure like this, as the fraction of seconds, you will see the value like this. So these are very fast shutter speeds. The faster the shutter speed, the shorter the time the image sensor will was exposed to light. So the more fast shutter speed you have, it's the very short time, or your less time you will give your sensor to be open. The slower the shutter speed, the longer the time the image sensor was exposed to light. So we will have a long exposure photography concepts where we keep the shutter speed around 1 second or more. So that we consider as a long exposure, because we are letting the camera to open the shutter for that much of time. So that's why it's a very long time, or so we call it as a long exposure shot. And you can see the example here in this photo. The fast shutter speed, it's making that person look still, and on the image in the right side is a slow shutter speeds, where the person passing by is showing in a very blurry, because that camera was in a slow shutter speed and it was not able to capture the person in a static or still. So that's how the shutter speed mode looks like in the dial, camera dial, and how the value looks like. So these are the shutter speeds values. If you see, it can go as low as 30 seconds and as high as 1/4000. So some camera offers 1/8000 also. So that's how the shutter speed looks like in the camera settings. Choosing a shutter speed one step faster than the current shutter speed, by for example changing the shutter speed from 160 to 125 is referred to as increasing shutter speed by one step. As we learned in exposure compensation, when we change the camera settings value from one to other, that will be considered as a stop or step. So that will increase the value either if we are going in a increment for just making the shutter speed more slow, then it will double the exposure. If we making the shutter speed more fast, then it will half the exposures. So here what I'm doing, I'm just changing the shutter speed from 1/60 to 1/25. So it's just half the amount of time the shutter will remain open. Choosing shutter speed one step slower than the current shutter speed, for example by changing the shutter speed from 125 to 160. So it just again the exactly opposite example, that we are talking about slow shutter speed, and we are just playing with the one step again. So it's double the amount of time the shutter will open. So 1/25 to 1/60. So it's just letting the camera open more time the shutter. So it will be considered as a more long exposure than the previous one. So if you are using a Nikon DSLR camera, shutter speed changes in 1/3 stops. So third stops is there, third steps, and some models also support increment of one step or 1/2. So now we will talk about the aperture. So aperture controls the brightness of the image that passes through the lens and falls on the image sensor. So it let the light come through the sensor, and it has some eye kind of structure where it will make the eye bigger when we are at wide angle, when you are wide aperture. So very small f number. So it is letting all the light come in, and you have seen the f numbers like this: f1 by 1.2, 1.4, f2, f2.8, and we can go up to f32. So these are very different value of aperture, and we have a concept here: large aperture and small aperture. So when we talk about in numbers, large aperture means small f number, and small aperture means high f number, and low f number is means high aperture. Large aperture, small aperture. So it's very tricky thing, because when we talk more about high and low, we can get confused. So be careful: high aperture, low f number; low aperture, high f number. So at the value of f1.4, we have very wide aperture value. So it means it's a full open, and it's letting more light in. Aperture value used in frame decides the depth of fields. So the more large f number you have, the more depth of field will be. But at the compensate of light, it will reduce the amount of light coming to the sensor. So you can get good depth of field, but at the cost of light. So be careful, and when you are playing with the different f numbers aperture, try to judge the light condition, and record short will always help you to find the right value for you. Depth of field: the distance in front of and in behind the focus point that appears to be in the focus is referred to as a depth of field. So you can see the image below. So there is one image with the high f number, and you can see all these boxes from start to end all looking in focus, and that because it's increased the depth of field. And image on the right side, you can see it's low f number, and you can see only this box is looking very much in focus, and anything behind it and anything in front of it looking somewhere out of focus and not in complete focus. So that's how the aperture works, and it will give you some kind of effect also if you are using well. And be careful, because it can reduce light coming in if you are not in control of light. So you are in natural light condition, you have to be very careful using aperture. So that's how the dial pan it looks like. So we have a button, and A signifies that we are in aperture mode, and we have f number values like this. We can go as low as a low aperture, higher it's a low aperture, small f number, high aperture, large f number. Yeah. So that's the one step. We are changing FA to f5.6. That's covering the one step. Raising the f number one step is referred to as stopping aperture down as a step, or stepping aperture down and f stop, down and f stop. So it's like the same concept. We are either increasing f number or reducing the value, but it will treat as a one step, and it can half or double the exposure. But here most of the time we will talk about the brightness of the image, that if an image is looking brighter or darker, and it's an opening. Aperture is like a opening of eye, and we can eye small and big using these aperture values. Lowering the f number by one step is referring as a stopping aperture up a step, and stepping aperture up an f stop. This doubles the area of aperture or opening. Doubling the brightness of the image that falls on the image sensor. So if you are using the Nikon DSLR camera, shutter speed changes in 1/3 steps. So it's the same again, because the concept remains same and it applies to all different EXIF settings. So we have third steps there, 1/3, and some model supports increments of 1 step or 1/2 step. So now we will talk about ISO sensitivity. In definition, ISO sensitivity is a measure of the camera's ability to capture light. So digital camera converts the light that falls on the image sensor into the electric signals for processing. ISO sensitivity is raised by amplifying the signals. In other words, if ISO sensitivity is raised from ISO 100 to ISO 200, while the aperture is left unchanged, so what will happen? It will capture or sense more light. So the same exposure can be achieved with shutter speed as twice as fast. So we are increasing ISO and it will letting use more high shutter speed because we have more sensing of light in a camera. If you raise ISO sensitivity, you can choose faster shutter speed and achieve with a shutter speed twice as fast. If you raise sensitivity, you can choose faster shutter speed. Oh, I believe it's a double. Okay, and reduce the camera blur. So if you are in a high shutter speed, we can reduce the chances that image will look blur because handshake will not come into picture. We will have more still image if you are in good high shutter speed. So this way the people say that ISO sensitivity should be raised if light is poor. So many people you must have seen, they say that raise the shutter ISO and you can have the good shutter speed and in a poor light condition. But there is a caveat actually. When you raise a shutter speed, when you raise ISO, it can bring noise. So we will just see how what the noise is. So no flash, low light photography. When lighting is poor, you can use the flash to light the portrait subjects. So you can see these images. The light, it's a indoor photo, and light is not good enough. But photographer has used flash on the left image, and the right image is taken with high ISO sensitivity with a flash off. So flash was not on, and you can see the both image have different feel. So if you raise ISOs, you can optimally expose both the portrait subject and the background without using a flash at all. So if you see image on the right side, it is taken with the without flash, and you can see this. You can clearly see the elements in the background. But image on the left side, it's captured only the elements where the flash reaches. So flash is having limited range of light. So you have to be very careful that which power of flash you are using. At full power, it will give you somewhere around 20 feet for some flashes, but the same flash will give you different distance capture at different power of different level of power on a flash. So be careful when you are using manual flash that you have to adjust the flash power to get a good exposure and cover the reach. Noise at high ISO. So raising ISO sensitivity allows faster shutter speed, reducing blur caused by the subject or camera movement. But in fact, raising ISO sensitivity can introduce the type of image artifact known as noise. So this is a image artifact. We call as a noise into your photographs. So you can see this image, sample image below. That image looks very grainy, and I've just mentioned the different ISO level. So this image is just a good example for how the image looks like at different ISO. So at a very high ISO 12,800, it was very grainy, and at ISO 100 you can see it's very clean. So we try to be at the lowest ISO where possible to get clean images, and on very different photography demand, like in the capturing stars and all, you may need to use high ISO, but that's a different topic, and it's a very different way of doing photography when we do star capture photography and capturing Milky Way and all. So that demands the high ISO sensitivity to capture all those elements in the sky. Raising ISO sensitivity amplifies the electronic signals, which also amplifies any noise in the signals. As a result, the higher the ISO sensitivity, the more obvious the effects of noise on your photographs. The same is true of all digital cameras. We recommend that you raise ISO sensitivity only as high as needed to avoid blur. So when you are using higher ISO, try to use it till the time when you need a handheld shutter speed. So when you have handheld shutter speed, if you are not on tripod, if your lens do not support vibration reduction or stabilization feature to work with the some low shutter speed, try to avoid high ISO and keep it minimal. So just to capture the image, what is required, you can keep the ISO level till that level. ISO sensitivity can be set manually by the photographer or automatically by the camera. So you have ISO sensitivity settings in your device. Some camera offers buttons specific for working with ISO sensitivity, and you can have the sensitivity either manual control or auto control. So if you set the sensitivity at the auto control, the camera will control the ISO sensitivity. So be careful when you are in auto ISO, because your camera is deciding that what level of ISO it needs. But there is a trick here. In auto ISO, we have a settings to control what the maximum or minimum shutter speed it will use. So the maximum and minimum shutter speed can be controlled. That minimum shutter speed you need this. So you can set minimum shutter speed, not the maximum. The minimum shutter speed you need the device. Like you don't want to reduce the shutter speed below your handheld shutter speed. So handheld is something related to your focal length. So if you are using a 50 mm lens, so your handheld shutter speed will be 1/60, because we don't have 1/50. So 1/60 is the value. So you can set the camera to auto ISO and set the minimum shutter speed value to 1/60. So at any condition, if a light is low, camera will not reduce the shutter speed below 1/60. So there will be no chance that camera will go to long exposure just to compensate the light. Now we will talk about focusing modes. We have one shot focusing mode in Canon. We have AFS in Nikon, and which represents single focus capability. So these modes, as we discussed, they are single focus modes. So when you do focusing, they'll lock the focus on that, and you can complete the capture by fully depressing the shutter release button. In this mode, when you depress the shutter release halfway, the camera focuses on the subject just once. There's no continuous adjustment. So your camera will focus only once when you halfway press the shutter release button. This mode saves battery power and is ideal for subjects that aren't moving. So as we discussed a lot about this mode is good for stationary subjects. So when subject is not doing so much movement, or even if the living subjects like bird, animal, if they are not doing too much movement, they are just around the same place or sitting, you can use this mode, and it will help you save battery, because a focusing system demands more battery power, and if you are in continuous focusing mode, it will drain the batteries more faster compared to this single shot or one shot. And the focal points look like this on your device, and you can see that one square is bigger, so because it's a selected focal point, and when you change the focal point or shift your focal point, it will remain there until you reset the focal points and make it come into the center. Center focal point will be the strongest focal point, so keep a note of this, that you should be always have focal point in the center, because center focal point will be the strongest one and it will give you better result. So these images we have seen that how the camera settings look like when we play with the focusing modes. Continuous focusing mode, AI servo, AF in Canon, AFC in Nikon, stands for continuous focusing modes. So these modes are good for moving objects because when we have subject in continuous movement, there is possibility they may either have little bit movement in front or in the back, so they can go a little bit back or come in front. So that's how you can have your subject more in focus if you are keeping your focal point on the subject. So be careful when you are using continuous focusing mode. Try to do full zoom or try to have your fill the frame. If you are filling the frame, it's more easy for you to control the focusing modes. Otherwise, you can use it when with a tracking modes feature in your camera device. So with tracking mode or tracking feature, you can let your camera track the subject. So when you focus on your subject and press the shutter release button, it will lock the subject in the tracking system, and it will track where the subject moves. The focal point also track the subject. So that's a better way, and I use that technique mostly in the bird photography. In continuous focusing mode, the camera detects the subject's movement and refocus accordingly to keep the subject or object sharp as a tack. So tack sharp is the term that if your image is tack sharp, it's most of the time it will be the more better result, and you will get more appreciation. No, this mode uses a lot of battery power because it is continuously focusing and refocusing. So as we discussed in previous focusing modes, continuous focusing modes demand more battery because your focusing system is keep running, and it drain out the battery with more consumptions of using this mechanism. So try to avoid it and use it when it demands when condition demands you for the continuous focusing modes. Water. Now we are at this topic, that automatic focusing modes. In automatic focusing, autofocus mode, this is AI focus AF in Canon and AFA in Nikon, which stands for automatic focus. This is default autofocus mode on camera that have this feature. So when you bought a camera, so by default it will be on autofocus. So be careful when you are buying camera. So make sure that you change the focusing modes according to your need, and it will give you better results. You have to remember that photography can be an art, and in art you have to go with what's in your mind's eye. So when you're focusing and with the autofocus mode, it's you decide that this will be the subject and you're focusing on, but it can shift. If subject move to some different direction, your focusing can be shifted, or you can lose the focus. So, but you are in, if you are using manual focus, then you have more control in your focusing system, and you can have better control and which point or which area of the subject you want to be in good focus. This mode maintains focus if you change subject or subject moves. So if you are in automatic focus, it automatically change the focus, and when the subject doing any movement, so you just need to keep your focal point on the subject, and it'll always try to take the best focus from the subject. But it can trick you if the conditions not favoring, like we have very busy background, so then camera can trick yourself, and you will find that camera is focusing or not, you are not able to focus. So there are two conditions when camera stops focusing, and it's very common problem with your digital device, that when you have very low light condition, when light is not good, light condition is very poor, and camera is not able to identify the focal point, then when you keep pressing that focus button, and it will not let you click the photos, so you will not be able to press the shutter release button, it will not let you. So this is very common problem in a DSLR device, and to overcome this, you have to have a better light condition. Either you can use it your artificial light, flashlight, or continuous light, anything you have with you, or you can go to a place where you have good light condition. I've tested it by raising high ISO also. If you are raising ISO in a poor light condition, then also it'll let you capture the image instead of struggling with that capturing a shutter release button. Manual focusing modes. So this is MF in Nikon, which stands for manual focus. How many on many lenses you would see AF and MF switch for focus mode selection. Manually focusing the camera is perhaps the most frustrating barrier between good and great photography. So this is really frustrating, because we want to move into manual focus, and we hold ourselves. So it's not very easy way or not easy path to complete, but gradually with practice we can taste it how manual focus works. And there is very good trick or finding in macro photography. You have to be on manual focus if you want to even feel that details or something, or you want to be at the good level of macro photography, you have to be on manual focus. Because at very shallow depth of field, it's very difficult for camera to decide where to focus. It's you with the manual focus who can give you better focus on the subject using manual focus. Achieving perfect focus requires using the distance measuring on the lens barrel. So there are distance measuring symbols on your lens or device, and you have to use your measurement tapes. You can use to measure the distance. You can calculate it, that where the exact focus will be, and even perhaps measuring the distance from the lens to subject with a tape measure. So I've seen many professional photographers, they travel with the measurement tapes, and they calculate that where will be the exact focus using the applications. We have many applications available in the Google Play Store, where you can download the exposure calculation app, and you can feed in your device settings, and they will tell you at what will be the focal point and where at what distance you will have the sharp focus. And you can use measurement tape, and in manual focusing modes you will get that sharpest possible focus with your lens with that particular settings. So that's how the manual focus works, and it's very good to practice, and you will feel the difference, that how the image quality is improving. there is a diopter adjustment on most DSLRs. It's the right next to the viewfinder. So you must have seen this small button besides the viewfinder. This is a diopter adjustment. It will let you make a minute adjuster to the focusing capacity based upon any irregularities in your eyesight. So if you have some eyesight problem where you can see things near or far, and you are using specs for overcoming, but it's sometimes it's difficult to use the specs with your camera device. So camera device has their built-in function to overcome the limitation, and you can adjust this diopter to according to your eye. And when you see that subject is looking very sharp in the viewfinder using diopter adjustment, you can capture the images using without using your specs. So you don't need to wear glasses to view sharp objects. You can use this feature in the camera device. And you can also use depth of field preview button to help determine focus, but this is more advanced technique. So there is a PV button in some device. You can press this PV button and it will tell you that how the image will be the looking after capture. So it's a final look you will see on the LCD. Manual focus is essential when you focus on non-traditional subject. For example, a subject that is in the background when the foreground is busy and dominating. So when you are capturing something where subject is not in a very desired condition, where the background is very busy, then it can be very difficult, and only manual focus will help you out. Because when you're capturing a subject and background is very busy, in autofocus it can deviate and it can mislead your camera sensor for autofocusing, and you can miss the focus from subjects. So in those conditions, manual focus will be your friend, and it will help you capture the subject in a sharp even with the busy background. Focus indicator blinking keeps work even when you are in manual focus mode of lens camera, which is visible in viewfinder. So if you are in viewfinder and capturing images using viewfinder, not the LCD, you will see a dot on the screen where it keeps blinking until you lock the focus. So when you lock the focus, that dot stop blinking. So that's the symbol that subject is in complete focus, and you can use that function even with the manual focus. But keep a note, you need to use the button also, that focusing button. It will not work, but that stops the blinking when it's in focal point and when it's in sharp focus. In Canon, we have beep sound for that function. I tested it with one of my students in previous workshop, where he has a Canon device and he want to learn that how we can have good focus in manual focus mode in Canon device. So in Canon, it beeps when a subject coming in full focus and we are in manual focus. We have to press that focusing button and it will beep when focus is correct. Most of the time, except extreme low condition, this could help you get the subject in tack sharp when having manual focus on. So most of the time you will get good focus using. Now we are at the section of this workshop where we'll talk about composition techniques. And whenever we talk about composition techniques, rule of thirds will always come into our mind, and because this is the most widely used composition rule and most easiest to understand, and it can be the base of your composition techniques, and you can work with other techniques, but if you learn this rule, it will be more easy to get feel of that how better composition can help you change the feel of image, and how it can visually increase or enhance the impact. So this is one of the most talked about composition techniques, perhaps because it is so simple to implement, but also because of what it suggests. All you need to do to divide your frame vertically line into 3 equal parts and horizontally into 3 equal parts. So when we divide our frame in lines, vertical and horizontal, like this, we have some lines crossing other lines and creating some intersection points. So these intersection points we call as a focal point in our frame. So by placing our subject on the around those focal points where these lines meet or intersect each other, you will have better and visual impact, and you will let your viewer to reach your subject more simple way, or more easily identify where the subject is. And you will encourage your viewer away from the center of the frame. So it is the nature, human eye nature or human sense, that when we see any frame, we try to see around these focal points. So this is scientifically proved that whenever we see any image, we try to see the image around focal points. So even if the advanced rules use focal points created using rule of thirds. So this forces them to look around the image and makes your composition more interesting. So if you see in this image, I placed the focal, my vertical line, one of the vertical line, right on the bird, and intersection point is just on the right eye. Because eye is for me is the most interesting part in this bird, and because the bird whole body having good texture and all, so I place one whole vertical line. So that's a very good example for placing subject using rule of third. And this is the next composition techniques: cut out the unnecessary elements. So it's a very basic or very easy way to understand that when we have any composition frame and we have distractions around it, so we will be any place where we have so many distractions around subject, and we are so far, or we don't have a liberty to use zoom lens, we don't have zoom lens also, and we have to work with the prime lens like a 50 mm something, and we can't go very near to subject. So in those conditions, better to capture your frame and crop it and cut out the unnecessary elements. So if anything which is making distraction in the image, you can crop it, and you can make your final image. So this is the image below is the example, and that as a few ways you can achieve this in photography, including getting closer to your subject. As I said that you can use your zoom lens if you have, or you can crop the frame using longer focal lens for a narrower field of view. So you can you can fill the frame with your zoom lens by zooming into the subject. We can use depth of field to isolate the subject, and if we are using a very wide aperture, that everything will be blurred out in the background. So you can see in this example, I captured this plant. I was very far from the plant and I could not go near. There were some limitations. So I captured it like this and cropped and make the final work like this. It looks very clean. So that's how you can compose and use this composition technique and compose it after capturing the image. And you can use different techniques for this, and we can use depth of field to very shallow depth of field, or we can use elements in the scenes, or using shadows to hide things that do not contribute. So if we have a scene where a lot of shadows are playing a role, we can use the shadows in our favor by hiding the elements which do not play much role in the frame. So we can compose it like that anything coming in the shadow will not be so much visible in the frame, and you can highlight the subject. Leading lines. So this is a very simple way of using the lines is there for drawing the power. It's just lines helping the viewer to reach the subject. Lines that are simply graphic can be used to lead the viewer around your images. So if you see this image, in this image you can see multiple lines coming from different directions, and they are reaching to spider on a stem, and it's helping viewer to reach the subject. So when you are using leading line, it is not necessary to have your subject around rule of thirds. It's a kind of breaking rule of third. This technique can be used very well, and here I'm using multiple lines, and if you notice the lines coming from diagonal, they are coming from the intersection points of rule of thirds. So if you have lines in your frame and you are using those lines around the focal points of rule of thirds, that could be more impactful or have more impact than the other lines. So here we have 1 line, 2 line, 3 lines. So these are called leading lines. When you are looking at the scene and deciding how to compose it, consider what your subject is first, and then consider what elements in the scene might draw the viewer towards the subject. So it's a very, very good way of judging your scene. So before even capturing, try to find something good in the subject, and then select the elements which you want to include in your frame. So these are, we can say, planning phase of composition. So if you are in good of planning of composition, you will have more better results and more chances to get good results than by just going and capturing the frames. And can you find the receding lines? If you find some receding lines there in your frames, like the fences that draw you to the old house on the hill. So it's a kind of, it's a technique and how you can add more interest in your composition. Maybe there's a crack in the concrete leading to a flower growing at the base of the wall. The viewer's eye will naturally follow the lines, so they can be very useful in directing people to what you want them to look at. So leading lines are really good way to lead your viewers' eyes to the subject, and you have to give them a direction that how viewer viewing the image and how it can lead to the subject. So if we see this image, every time we want to avoid spider, it's not possible because the all lines leading to the spider. So that's how we can control the viewer eye using leading line. And just imagine that these lines are not there. If web lines were not there, just a stem and on the spider, we could have a very big empty space here. We call negative space, and it works for some time, but for this frame, leading lines helping adding more interest. Repetition. So this is the composition techniques used in a very creative art way. So in very creative artwork, we use repetition techniques to show some similar objects, and they can be arranged in repetitive patterns in your photographs. Things like fence posts, the lines of the pedestrian crossing, zebra crossings you have seen, they are in repetitive patterns, and orchard of trees. So line of trees, if they can be also considered as a very good pattern. Anything that can be arranged into a repeating pattern can bring a great intensity to a photograph. Depending on the subject matter, it may be calming, like a row of pillars on a building, or alarming, like illness endless rows of people walking in time. So it's you who will decide that image will be very calming, very peaceful, very soothing to eyes, or very alarming, like people rushing to something. So all these are examples of good repetitive compositions, but they have different visual impact, and depend because how we use elements and how they are playing their role, it all depends the overall feel in the frame. So you can see in this example that I captured a leaf here, and how the lines are repeating in the same pattern. It's a very good example of repetition. Creating layers. One technique for adding depth to our images is layering things over the top of the other things. So it's a very good technique and very interesting, very widely used in street photography. In street photography, we want to show different stories, and if we have multiple stories or multiple scenes coming in the frame, we can use this technique very well to add some depth in the image, in the frame. So if we are able to achieve this, they'll look more dynamic to viewing. Simply put, you can cover the part of your frame with something closer to the camera in order to give the illusion of depth. So you can see this example. You can see this example here. I have one person just right in front of my camera, and there is one person on the left, just around 1 or 2 meters away from the camera, and you can see the two people in between. So they are almost in the same distance, but I kept this person in the middle because this is the person which was very interesting to the interesting looking in a frame, because it's that person is rightly coming in the middle, and it's adding more balance in the frame. If you see the image, when we try to view this image, we just directly go to the subject, which is in the person in the middle. We could have select this person as a subject, but this person is not holding over eyes because the balance is not coming into picture. So unless if you are creating balance, balance is created in the frame, then only you can hold viewer eye to the subject. If balance is not there, then you can see the image, but your eyes will not stay on the subject. They will keep revolve around the different elements in the frame. So creating balance is key to any composition. So simply put, you can cover part of your frame with something closer to the camera in order to give the illusion of depth. You can use the leaves of a tree to frame a couple in the park. So we have seen many images from pre-wedding photography and all, that where we'll add some leaves or some tree in the frame, and some people sitting behind on the benches and all, and they'll add some interesting effect and depth. Empty glasses on bar while went and their pours. So if we can take example of serving drinks in the functions and festivals, where we can capture that action, and we can keep other background elements in the blurriness or soft focus. They'll add more interest. Or the audience listening to the speaker, we can capture the speaker from an angle where audience also coming into the frame. So that will add more impact, and it will give more depth also in the frame. In event photography, it's very common to see frame like that. And if we see, if we just show the speaker right from the front, then it will be less impact. It will having less impact compared to the speaker also showing with the audience. listening to the speaker. So the scene will be completed. So all of these things not only fill your frame with your interesting elements, they further the story you are trying to tell. So we are just trying to fill the frame, but also it is helping to cover the story. So if you look at this picture here, it is just showing you a story some of an event. So some event was going on. If you see how the people gathering around here, so it shows that what was happening at that time. So that story is communicated. So that purpose is achieved, that why the photo captured. So that's how a storytelling image can be achieved using this technique. So this is the first we can say the layer. So because we are creating layers here, this will be the second layer. Okay, I treat this person as a third layer because it is just before the subject, and this will be the subject right in the middle. So I try to create a balance here. So that's how. So this is my upcoming workshop, and it is on Lightroom photo editing. So I'll show you different techniques of editing photo in Lightroom using custom presets, and we'll learn that how we can create our own custom presets, how we can download the presets for Lightroom. And if you have Lightroom or planning to buy Lightroom, then this is very good workshop for you. And even in the sense, if you are looking into post-processing using any tool, getting idea of how post-processing works and the basics, that why we do post-processing, I'll share that information also in this workshop. And it is very good, and your photography is a half job done if you are not following post-processing technique. Post-processing is something which is filling all the blemishes or defects in your photo and making it complete for a professional work. So never underestimate the post-processing part. It is just making the photography complete when we are more in control of post-processing. So again, that is also free webinar online workshop, and you can book your seat now. And when you book your seat, you will get an email from the Zoom, because the registration link is from Zoom website. So when you complete your registration, you will get your meeting joining details, and using that details you can join the live session, and you will surely definitely get more better information. And I'm also covering the SEO. You must have heard this term, SEO, search engine online. So you can how you can use that technique to make your images come in Google search. So it's very good technique. When you search something on Google, you will find a lot of images, and if you type in SPW expedition or SPW photography workshop, SPW workshop, you will find all those images. And why the images coming into your search? Because I'm using that technique, search engine online. So that's very good technique to extend your reach, and how you can help your viewer reach you easily, even using Google search. I hope you like this session.
Yes, Sumit, thank you very much for this wonderful session. We got a lot of insights about the camera settings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. So we shall we take lunch break? If you want to have a lunch and then join for question session, Q&A. We'll just recap it what we have learned. and we will just have a discussion on those topics which you want to discuss or you want to get more information.
I don't have any questions, Sumit, at this point of time. It should be fine for me.
Pratik?
You can wind up, sir. Within 5-10 minutes, if you can just like brief up whatever you had covered from beginning today. In another 5-10 minutes, you can wind it up.
Okay, actually the last Q&A session is only for the questions and discussion. If you have any topic out of this content which you want to discuss, you can raise it and we will have more detailed discussion on those. So it's a very interactive session actually, because the theory session I kept it without questions, so I can give more and more, and Q&A session is only for the discussion. It will be two-way communication.
Okay.
You must have learned something here, and if you want to discuss the topic and any terminology, we can detail it because it will help you and the other guy also who may not have looking to question, but he may have that question in his mind.
So you can focus about the manual mode and the shutter priority mode.
Yes.
Like shutter mode, like if we want to capture the fountains or waterfalls, the way it is moving smooth, the way if we want to use it in a
silky water effect, we say in photography. That yes,
that one. And one more would be like for now, since it is tomorrow, the solar eclipse is there. Which mode to be thought about, whether it should manual or should we go for aperture mode? So that would be a good discussion now.
Keep a thumb rule of that. Whenever you are capturing any frame or any subject which is not in your control, so try to use try to have a manual focus, because if in semi modes we have learned about that, it will be the camera who is deciding the final exposure, it's not you. So if you are in shutter priority, it will adjust the aperture to compensate light, and if you are in aperture priority, it will adjust the shutter speed to compensate light. And in program mode, it's doing the same. So be careful whenever you are in any condition. Manual mode is your friend, because in manual mode you are deciding how much light will come on your sensor. So like for the fountain capture, be on manual mode and try to capture it when the light is not good. It means around 6 p.m. or when the very you can see low visibility.
Okay,
so that low visibility, what it will do, even if you are in semi mode, like you are using a aperture priority, so if you adjust your aperture, adjust that you just keep an eye on the shutter priority, shutter speed in aperture priority mode. So what it will do, it will reduce the shutter priority to give you good exposure, and you will have a magic effect of that. You will get a low shutter speed because the light is already poor. So camera will lower the shutter speed, and the water effect from the fountain which you want, you will get it without losing any details. And then you can move to manual mode also. In manual mode, what you can do, you can go your aperture little bit in higher side to make the water little bit underexposed. So it's a very, very common mistake when we capture water, that water lose all the details. It's very common to see in your in any images. If someone learning that when you capture any fountain and something, you will see the details not showing, and you can see it looking pure white. So try to show some details, and how you can achieve it. You can achieve it in a manual mode, because your camera in semi mode always try to highlights anything which looks white.
Okay, sir.
So try to work with both aperture priority and shutter priority in the manual, aperture priority and manual mode, and see which give you better result, because all device have their own capability and they can give you different results. So it's you how you will decide that you are where in which setting you are getting better result. And for tomorrow you will be in the manual mode only, because in Eclipse you will get some lines of light.
Yeah.
So be careful, because if you are in semi mode, they will be overexposed, and you will miss that ring part.
Okay, sir.
So try to practice it during the Eclipse, and to start with the underexposed, and just raise the let the more light coming in if you feel it's very underexposed. Okay. You have to manage it, and you just go to YouTube. You will find many different discussion tutorials all about how we can capture solar eclipse.
Okay, sir. I'll go through them.
Yeah, but the basic concept is you have to control the light, because it will be the light you are trying to capture. So when you are capturing light, so you can't rely on the semi modes or auto modes.
So compulsorily we have to go with manual mode only.
Yes, that is the best way. Yeah.
Okay, sir. One more would be like which mode would be good for birds in flight?
Birds, for bird photography, we always say it's the aperture priority mode. But again, it's the light condition which decide. If you are in good light condition, aperture priority mode is your first choice. But if light condition is not good, then you have to work with the manual mode. Better advice. Because most of the time, actually, I advise to work with the shutter priority if light is not good, instead of manual mode for someone who is learning photography. Because what will happen in shutter priority mode, you will have shutter speed as per your need.
Yeah.
So if you want to freeze your bird action, you have to have a high shutter speed, or you want to get a bird sitting on a wall or tree, you can have a handheld shutter speed. But the thing is, when you capture the image and you see it's coming darker, or over, it will not come overexposed. It can be darker only. When you are in semi modes, it can be aperture priority or shutter priority image. You cannot be overexposed. It can be underexposed. Why? Camera is already trying to give you best exposure. But if there is a condition where, just take an example, you are in a shutter priority mode, and camera is trying to open the aperture, and you have a zoom lens of 7300. 7300 have a widest aperture. Are you aware?
I'm not so much used to the larger lens.
Okay. Let me.
The 200 mm lens only at max.
Okay. Which lens you have?
Sir, I use Sony Alpha 58.
Okay.
For that only, which lens they have given, I use that.
Wide aperture. How much minimum f number you can select in that?
So this is what I was like trying to learn in this session.
No, there is a limitation. It's not a question. There is a limitation. On lenses, you will have a value mentioned there. Some 2.8 to something like that. Some limitation is there. That at a full zoom, you will have this much of minimum aperture. At a normal range, you will have this much of aperture. So I'm just giving you an example. In 7300 Nikon lens, there is a limitation of 5.6 aperture at 300 zoom.
Okay.
So at 300 zoom, it will not let you go below 5.6.
Okay.
So this is the limitation. So if light is not good, let me complete. If light is not good and you are on shutter priority mode, so you have adjust your shutter speed. But what your camera is doing, your camera is adjusting the aperture to give you better exposure.
Okay.
So camera reaches the 5.6, so that limit reached. So it will not go below 5.6. So what is the other thing you can do to get you good exposure? Just try to recall what we have learned in exposure balance techniques.
Better to go with manual mode where we can adjust the shutter aperture as well as the shutter speeds.
No, that's not the correct answer. The thing is, we have learned about ISO.
Yeah.
So when the light is not good, we can use the ISO function also. But ISO also have grainy effect, noisy effect. So better not to go higher on ISO part.
Okay.
So use the ISO at the limited value. Some device support less noise on ISO 400, some support less noise on ISO 800, some on 1000. It's like that. So device cost define how the ISO capability is. Entry level device may show you good more noise on ISO 400 compared to professional device, the higher end device.
Okay, sir.
So you can use ISO function to get more light in your frame, but be careful, it can bring noise also, and you can reduce the quality. So the thing is, when noise coming into picture, it will look grainy, and if you try to reduce the noise, we have a noise reduction feature in post processing. What it will do, noise reduction feature, it will blur the pixels.
Okay.
So instead of noticing those points, we think that it's gone, but it's not gone. It's there only. It's just blurred out.
Okay,
So what it is just a layer. It's adding blur layer in the image, so we cannot see the noise in the or noise reduction feature applied or function applied. So it's adding blur layer in the image.
Noise image.
So it will taken out all the details. So the more zoom you will do, more filling frame you will do, and with a heavy noise in your frame, it will show more soft effect, or details will not be visible correctly. So try to make balance. Try to make balance between the ISO, between the aperture, between the shutter speed. So all these will help you. And exposure compensation, it's really good feature in DSLR device. You can get more better quality images if you learn the exposure compensation. Try to use it and see how it makes the difference. Any more question?
No, sir. Now I have got these things. I'll just once again go through all the details.
I'll share all the content. You can easily read it, and you can. If you still have any question, you can just email me, and I should get back to you.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you for this session, sir.
Most welcome.